Good evening. We are live. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Hi, everybody. It's me. It's Mildred. And we're live again for another episode of Visible Women on LinkedIn. Woo! Exciting. I know you're excited about this because I'm excited about this and Olivia's excited about this. But before we proceed, I need to know who is here, who is part of our regular crew, who is tuning in live today, and who is here, who's brand new. And this is your first time tuning into Visible Women on LinkedIn, in which case you are very welcome. And my regular guys, you are welcome too. I love seeing you here, and I love that you're joining me. You've been joining me here every Thursday for the last 3 weeks. This is week number 4. So we're ready for another exciting session of Visible Women on LinkedIn. But who is here and who is live? Let me head over to the comments and see who is here with us. Hey, hi, Sonia, fancy intro, right? We had to upgrade, right? I had to upgrade, so yes, thank you so much. Hi, Sonia. Hi, Alex. Hi, good to have you with us. I don't know how many... Alex says, I am not a woman. I think I kind of figured out. I think the beard gave you away, Alex, right? And plus, I know who you are. So love that you're here, Alex. I know we mainly have women on here, but we love the guys as well. It's not an exclusive club, but so you're very welcome to join us tonight. So hi, Stella. Hi, Dolores. Hi. Hi, JP is in the house. Woo. Hi, JP. Good to see you here. Who else is here with us? Christiana. Hi, Christiana. Welcome back. Libby is here. Hi, Libby. Yemisi is here for the first time. Welcome. Good to have you here with us. I'm so happy to have you here. Hi, Lisa. Welcome, Lisa. Good to have you here. I think it's mainly UK people at the moment. Where are my US guys, right? Because I know it's like, what's the time over there? It's like afternoon or something, right? Or a late morning. So I want some of my US people to drop a message in the comments and let me know that you're here and you're representing Team USA, because we're all UK up in the house at the moment. Hi, Martha. Good to have you here. Donovan, Team Live. Woo. Excellent. You guys are awesome. We are going to have a great time this evening, and we're going to learn, and we're going to discuss, and hopefully we're going to reach some kind of point of views. I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is going to be interesting, and I need you to be involved in this, right? So I want you to type in the comments. I want you to type, if you hear something that you like, type it in comments. If you hear something you don't like, type it in the comments too, right? If you've got any questions, type it in the comments. Stella, I know you're in Germany, but it's kind of like UK-ish, not that far from us. I'm talking America. I'm talking across the pond type of people, but I love that you're here, Stella, right? Christiana's in the Christiana, I thought you were in the UK. Oh my gosh, I didn't know you were based in the US, right? Are you based in the US? But okay, right, listen, guys, we have got a great show on today. If you don't know and you're tuning in live, this is Visible Women on LinkedIn with me, Mildred Talabi. This is a series where we are having candid conversation, honest conversations with women who are on LinkedIn building their brand, and they're building their brand through being visible, because that's one of my mottos. In fact, that's my main motto about LinkedIn. It's about being visible. Start being visible, and the best time to start is today. So today you're going to hear from Olivia. I'm going to bring her on in a second, but here's what I want you to do. If you're here, because there's no way for me to know exactly who is here, because they don't tell me at this end who's here. I can only tell by the comments, right? Or later on when I look. So I want you to make sure that you react. So either like, clap, whatever you want to do, use one of the react buttons, just like a form of registration to say, hey, I'm here. And if you're watching on Team Replay, I want you to do that too. Just type in Team Replay, but also react, just so I know who is watching this with us, right? Because it's good to have numbers, right? Numbers and stats, they are good to have, okay? And if you want to keep in touch, we've got 2 more episodes. I want you to register at mildredtalabi.com/visible women to have email reminders of what is coming up and who else I'm interviewing, because we've got 2 more coming, 2 more. But okay, listen, guys, because I want to make sure we get all the time to talk to Olivia. So we're going to bring her on in just a second. Munwara, hi, Munwara. Hi, Maria from Canada. Liz is here. Lolette is here. Nafisa is here. Great. We always have a LinkedIn user with no name. Hi, LinkedIn user from Los Angeles. Gula, hi. Welcome. Guys, listen. I wanna bring her in. Right? You know, because today's session, we are talking about the topic of diversity beyond race. Now, the reason we're talking about this, and my special guest tonight is an amazing lady called Olivia Crellin. She's a journalist for the BBC, as well as a freelance journalist. She's a broadcaster, and she's the founder of a social enterprise called PressPad, which aims to diversify the media. Now, we're going to find out more about that in a second. But I'm going to bring Olivia on to say hello, and then I'm going to tell you why I thought this would be an interesting conversation for us to have. So, Olivia, are you ready to join us? Yeah.
Hi.
Here she is. Hi, Olivia. Thank you for joining us on our Visible Women Crowd. Now, we're going to really talk about the topics of diversity. We're going to talk about your own journey to being visible on LinkedIn. But first, we want to get to know you. You know, we want to get to know, in your own words, like, tell us exactly what it is you do and how you came to do what you're doing today.
Sure. So, hi everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm a journalist by trade, and at the moment, I'm still a staff journalist at the BBC. I started journalism in my early 20s. I went to uni, read English literature, graduated, and while at uni, I was really fortunate to be able to get access to all of these bizarre grants, and that enabled me to travel, and I really got bitten by the travel bug. And while doing so, I also, started writing, making short documentaries. And so after uni, I decided I'm going to give journalism a go, but I also want to just get out of the UK and go somewhere and have a bit of a break after 3 years of what was quite an intensive experience at the uni I was at. So I bought a one-way ticket to Chile. And I started my journalism career there. I learned Spanish. I taught English as a foreign language, which was how I was able to actually finance getting into journalism at all. Had I had to stay in London, I don't think I could have afforded it because I had no one to stay with. And I probably also wouldn't have had as much fun or learned as much because I might have just been making coffees, as a lot of internships and work experience allow you to. So yeah, that's sort of was my way into journalism. I then went and got a master's in journalism and was lucky enough to have a scholarship to do that at a University of Columbia in New York. And then I spent 2.5 years in the States working for different places. You might know some of them, the Wall Street Journal, Vice News. I was at the BBC Washington Bureau. I worked for the digital arm of Al Jazeera, which was called AJ Plus. They have quite a lot of social videos. So I kind of traveled across the United States, New York, Washington. I spent some time in Puerto Rico, San Francisco, and it was a total education and a pleasure, and I was so lucky. And then I came back to the UK, and I worked a little bit for Channel 4 News for a while, and then I got my first staff job, and that was at the BBC, and I've been there ever since. And since then, I've mainly worked in international news, so for the World Service Radio, I've shot documentaries, mainly in South America, some in Africa, Tanzania and Kenya in particular. I once went and made a film in Kyrgyzstan. I don't know, anyone in the chat been to Kyrgyzstan? We might not get many takers there. And a couple of years ago, I found myself on another social network. It's amazing the power of social networks, and I can't wait to tell you more about how I'm discovering LinkedIn. It's been such a positive experience. But on Facebook at the time, I put out a note asking whether any of the journalists that I knew would take on an intern in their spare room so that they could afford to do unpaid or poorly paid work experience. And that was really the start of PressPad. So that's sort of, in a kind of short version, how I got from education really to where I am now.
Wow, I love that. And we're going to talk some more about exactly what PressPad is, because we want to dive into what it is you do with that. But you spoke about how you just pretty much upped and left and went to Chile to start your journalism career in your 20s, you know? So yeah, that took a lot of guts and a lot of confidence. Like, what was going through your mind at the time? Like, were you scared? Were you like, and I'm guessing you traveled by yourself, right?
Yeah.
Across the world.
So I've been lucky. It's funny because in my family, I'm a bit of the black sheep when it comes to travel. My parents aren't particularly well traveled. We, were really lucky to be able to kind of go on a family holiday once a year. Usually it was like France or Italy. But, wasn't like I was born into, I don't know, a family of, I don't know, businessmen who had lived abroad or, diplomats, or I don't know, some people have very exotic kind of upbringings and exposed to lots of different countries. And that wasn't the case at all. But when I was at uni, there were all sorts of grants to travel. And in my first summer, I backpacked around India. In my second summer, I backpacked around the Middle East, which at the time, that was quite scary. Went from the south of Turkey through Syria into Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, Palestine. And so Chile was scary. It was the furthest I'd ever been. It's probably as far as you can go from the UK, kind of in a straight line anywhere in the world. But I knew that I really wanted to get out. I loved experiencing different cultures. I knew I wanted to learn another language. Initially, I thought, maybe go back to the Middle East. But I was on my own as a woman. Previously, I traveled with boyfriends. And I thought, you know what, actually, I'd quite like to let my hair down. Spanish seems a little easier than Arabic. And I, as a student, fall in love with Latin American literature and sort of magical realism. And so I sort of had this image in my head of South America. So that was where I decided to go. And before then, I'd had a bit of experience as a journalist in my student paper, but I didn't totally know that I wanted to be a journalist. And so it was really just to get away and have an adventure. And in the end, I ended up working for an English speaking paper, doing an unpaid internship, but I was able to teach English, and that was my way of living, making a living. And while I was in Chile, there were a lot of student protests at the time, and I bumped into a cameraman for Reuters. I don't know if you guys know much about how the news industry works. You have things like the Associated Press, Reuters, AP, and they're what we call wire services, and they kind of put the stories out to the other organizations around the world. And so I then got a job, and that was kind of where it all started. So yeah, it was scary, but I had done quite a bit of quite kind of rough and tumble travel, been in some hairy situations. And I think I was just, I don't know, I just had a compulsion just to throw myself out there. So
yeah, I love that. And I see an early theme of doing things that scare you, but which we'll probably we're gonna get to later. But do you think, in your view, that without that, if you hadn't gone to Chile and did all of that by yourself, do you think that you would have gotten to where you are today in your career, working for the BBC, etc., or would it have been a lot tougher?
I definitely think it could have been tougher. In a way, though, I feel I was a bit spoiled because I was on the ground. I was, sometimes covering for the BBC correspondent when he was away on holiday. Foreign kind of correspondent networks are very, small. I'd gone and danced salsa with him. He was going on holiday. Could I cover, which at the age of 22 is insane. And in a sense, being back in the newsroom, in a way, my career has been a lot more sort of static and, newsroom based, learning different skills perhaps. But I definitely think it made me stand out. And, having learned another language, which I was really keen to do because I never felt I really had any skills, just being an English literature student. That was really important for me. And I think it also just showed, that, I think with a lot of jobs, but with journalism in particular, you have to be willing to do a lot of new things all the time. Yes, there are patterns and there are stories and, history repeats itself somewhat, but there's a lot of throwing yourself into talking to people you don't know about things you don't know and kind of getting up to scratch really quickly. And so I think definitely it showed that. And on top of that, it enabled me to have experiences and to cover stories that there's no way I would have been able to do being in a newsroom, in the UK, or even, any developed world, perhaps, where there were a lot more experienced journalists next to me. They just wouldn't have given me the chance. Whereas kind of out in the world, west of Chile, there didn't feel like there were as many rules in a way. So, I think that was partly it.
I love that. I love that. And Tom says, saying yes is always a good career move. Yeah, absolutely. Say yes, right? And then you can say no later if you don't know how to do it, Okay, that's good. JP says you're making a dream of traveling again. We're all dreaming of traveling, right? After this COVID clears off, hopefully we'll all go somewhere, But okay, so all right, so that's good. So that's kind of how you got started on this path. And then, so let's fast forward your career. You're in this career, and you mentioned about the whole Facebook thing and how PressPad got started. So take us to there. How did you get started with PressPad? Tell us exactly what it is and how you got started with that.
Sure. So PressPad's a social enterprise. And what we do is we're a host mentorship platform. And what that means is we find spare rooms with experienced professionals in the media, and we connect the people with those spare rooms with aspiring young people, journalists who have work placements but don't have anywhere to stay. And we've been running it now since April 2018, and have done a couple of pilots and have built a sort of marketplace website, which we sort of hope will become a kind of Airbnb meets LinkedIn. It all came out of this Facebook post where I was just thinking about my own experience. Pretty much it was cheaper to go to the other side of the world on a one-way ticket to start a career and to get noticed and get the experience I felt I needed to stand out than it was, to basically go 2 hours down, the train tracks to London. My parents were living in Brixton when I was born, which is where I live now, but had moved out to the Midlands. And there was one person, I think my mum's bridesmaid, very, very old family friend. And that was it. I didn't know anyone else I could stay with. And the Sutton Trust estimates that with the cost of accommodation and travel, it costs about £1,100 a month to do an unpaid work experience. So, if you're somebody that can't afford that, your parents can't afford it, or even you can't even afford, not to, you may be able to afford accommodation of some sort, but not then also to not get paid whilst working. So I had a version of this experience, even though, and I always, I'm very upfront about this, I would consider myself incredibly privileged. Both my parents are NHS doctors. I went to private school, partly because my grandparents had saved for that. That's another story. My grandmother was an exceptional woman that started a school from scratch, despite being so poor when she was born in Birmingham that she, had scurvy. Really had a very privileged upbringing and went to Cambridge for my undergraduate degree. So I just was thinking, if this is hard for me, it must be just inconceivable, impossible for other people. And then fast forward to the stable staff job I had at the BBC, and seeing my colleagues and how all of them, were pretty similar, affluent, white, middle class, and often had multiple properties once people got married, or were empty nesters or whatever. And I thought, what if we could connect people at an earlier stage when they have no contacts, no network, no money, nowhere to stay, and people who do, because the exchange there is going to be huge. The real sort of solution, other than obviously the obvious one, which is finding accommodation and affordable, safe accommodation for young people so that they can do work experience, the solution really is much bigger. And that is, trying to help diversify the type of people that we have in our newsrooms. And we've seen it with, the election of Trump and with Brexit, the way that media have often got these things wrong. Says a lot about the types of people that are within our newsrooms and the expectations. It's a certain mindset. So when we talk about diversity beyond race, part of it is to do with socioeconomics, part of it is to do with your context, where you grew up, your geography, but it's also to do with that mindset. And so I was really interested in looking at how really providing a very practical solution connected with a kind of cultural rewiring of networks could provide a solution to, the hidden elements of diversity, the diversity that we can't see, because it actually is about getting to know someone and kind of looking into their backstory a bit. So that's
I love it. Okay. I think this is a good place to talk about why I wanted us to have this conversation, right? For those who don't know, so Olivia is one of my clients and LinkedIn visibility coaching, right? And when we first started working together, and Olivia, before that, she told me the vision of PressPad, and I was like, oh my gosh, excited. Here's a brief background. So my background is a journalist. I trained as a journalist. You know this, Olivia. So how I actually got started in the media, I got a scholarship from News International, and that allowed me to study at a top journalism place, all of that, all expenses paid, right? And then to actually get my foot in the door in the media was through a positive action scheme, is what it was called. And it was by the Guardian newspaper. So in the scheme, I did 2 weeks of work experience, and which allowed me to go to different desks all over the place, got loads of people, got to know loads of people, got contacts. It helped my media career a lot. So when I started working with you, Olivia, and Olivia's like, okay, I'm about diversifying the media and the boardroom, and I was like, great, because in my journalism days, I would go into newsrooms and literally we used to have this morning briefing meetings, and there would be about maybe 100 or so people in the room, and I could count on one hand how many people were of color. So there would literally be about 5 people, if that, of color, me included, right? So as a young person, a young journalist, I would look at this. I'm like, this media needs diversifying big time, So this is where a lot of people go to when they think of diversity. They think of on a racial front, because of the fact that, especially in industries like the media, there isn't that diversity. Yes, there's other diversity lacking as well, but there isn't the racial diversity. So initially, that's kind of where, before I got to know you, I kind of thought this is what you set out to do. But PressPad has different objectives. So it's not diversity specifically relating to race, it's beyond that. So can you speak about why you didn't decide to focus on that element of diversity?
Sure. I mean, look at me. hear me talk. I think you have to stick with what you know, and not obviously PressPad isn't just a problem that I've encountered; it's a problem a lot of people have encountered. I think while we have a focus on maybe what is perhaps more, we call it socioeconomic diversity. Social mobility could be another word for it, but social mobility suggests, the ability to kind of move up in a class system, and I don't necessarily know if that's quite right. So it's hard to kind of find a word for it. But in essence, it was my experience, what I'd experienced. The difficulties being, faced with barriers of, network knowledge. The geographic, sort of isolation. If you weren't in London, you didn't know the right people, you didn't know what was going on, you couldn't just easily pop by and kind of ask someone for work experience or drop your CV off or all of that. And so I very much was sticking with what I knew. And they say that, if to authors, right, write what you know. And so we don't profess to be, to put racial or, gender or, sexual diversity up there. But often what we do find is that the people that we do end up helping, and, we're really kind of militant about making sure that we're, collecting all of the right data so that we can track who we are helping and what our impact is. The people that we do end up helping often are people who, of different, people of color, but that is not our primary objective. So I guess it would be absurd, I think, for me to be running a media diversity organization perhaps as a white person, because there's all sorts of, cultural experiences that I can't speak to, but we do try and operate in an intersectional way. So we're all about, trying to connect with different organizations and run a coalition response, because we realize that there are many, many different entry points of disadvantage, and those can be quite specific. Could I tell somebody who grew up in care, what the solutions are to their issues? Could I empathize with them? Could I? No, but could I find somebody who does? Yes. So I think for us, PressPad was very much born out of this financial barrier, the desire to overcome a financial barrier, and then the model that came out of that, this host mentorship model. And when it comes to other forms of diversity, we really just want to be cheerleaders and connectors for the many other groups that are doing great things. So, GALDEM was one. I don't know if many of you know of GALDEM, a fantastic organization started by a woman called Liv Little, with Charlie Brinkhurst-Cuff, who's also an author, as their editor-in-chief. And it's an online magazine for women and non-binary people of color. We're not GALDEM, but we partner with them and we try and uplift and share what they do. So it can be controversial, because often now I think we are very often tracking diversity in a way that is measurable and in a way that can be seen. So, within my own career, there are all sorts of questions around whether diversity is truly being upheld. And of course, there's also a lot of debate around, even terms, diversity, representation, inclusion, equity. All of these mean slightly different things and slightly different things for different people. But is diversity served if you have 50% of your presenters on screen in a news organization that are people of color, but yet the producers or the editors, those who commission the stories or sign off on the stories behind the scenes, they're not. That diversity is not seen there. Is that just, and I think maybe a lot of you have seen, and maybe Mildred's going to get to it, the Sainsbury's advert, and even where I work, this phrase virtue signaling has come up. So I think it does get incredibly complex. What we try and focus on is the experience we do have, the issue that we felt wasn't being addressed, which was the unseen, the hidden elements of diversity, the things that you can't see by looking at someone, or even, that you might assume by listening to someone speak. You might hear a northern accent and say, oh, that person's working class. Well, no, they just come from Yorkshire. That's what everyone sounds like that, or vice versa. So we really wanted to tackle what we felt wasn't being looked at, and also to challenge everyone to think, okay, hopefully at some stage we will reach a point where diversity is something that is considered in the round, so that somebody won't just have to say, well, we need to get this number quota of women or this quota of Black people or Asian people, whatever, that we can get to a stage where we say, okay, who are you? And of course, as with any leveling of playing fields, I firmly believe that actually those kind of quotas can be helpful, and that they should be enforced, and that all of those areas of diversity, that Mildred, you yourself experienced, in those newsrooms way back when, those are still problematic, and we still haven't gone far enough. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But the way I felt I could contribute, and the conversations I didn't feel were being had, and that were also pertinent to people of color and, people of, different genders and, sexual orientations, was this one about the financial barrier. And at the end of the day, you could be a person of color and from a very affluent background, and, it's not a problem. But at the end of the day, if you can't show up on the doorstep for an opportunity, or you can't even contemplate showing up because the maths just doesn't add up to even bother applying, then you're getting a whole range of voices that are not being heard. And that's just as worrying as any other form of exclusion.
I do want to talk about that, about whether it's just as worrying. But I do, but because you mentioned that Sainsbury's advert, right? So let's talk about that Sainsbury's advert, because again, going back to the journalism days, I remember being in the newsroom for for those who are not familiar with how the media space works, I don't know if they still do it this way, but there's the morning briefing where they kind of decide what are the stories for the day, you know, what angles are we going to take with the stories. I remember something happened in EastEnders. To this day, I cannot remember what it was. All I know is like one of the only black characters or Asian character in the program did something that was worthy of a news, you know, and somebody brought it up in the newsroom and they were kind of like, okay, so what angle should we take? Should we talk about how should we present the story? And then all of a sudden, like, I felt like the whole 100 eyes in the room looked at me, you know,
to speak on behalf of all Black people, right?
Exactly. Like I was now meant to be the spokesperson for the entire Black and Asian community in the world at large. So it was kind of like everyone's looking at me like, do you have an opinion? I didn't have an opinion. I was terrified. You know, I'd never spoken up in briefing before at that point.
Did you watch EastEnders?
At the time I did, you know, okay. I was on my way out. At least, but EastEnders was depressing, awful. Sorry for those who like it, right? But it was literally two issues with that. One was the fact that there wasn't that representation of Black and Asian people in the media. They didn't have people they could call on. So they were looking at me. I was only on work experience in that case, you know, so I didn't even have much to say. But also the second thing was, is this whole idea of like, okay, so when the other stories were happening, no one was looking at me to contribute, right? But here's a Black story. Let's look at the Black girl in the room. You know, let's look at the one that. So is this kind of, so with the Sainsbury's thing now, and for those who don't know, Sainsbury's put out an advert, one of 3. It's not the only one, but one of 3 adverts, and one of the adverts had a full Christmas advert, a dad doing dad stuff with his family, and loads of people didn't like it apparently because it was an all Black family and there were lots of complaints and boycotts around Sainsbury's. So with things like that, where do you think the problem lies? You know, I mean, Sainsbury's is not the media, and I know it's a different sector, but in terms of diversity representation, where does the problem lie, and where's the solution?
So I think this has a lot to do with thinking about the other side of the coin. And for me, PressPad, I believe, honestly, is a very powerful model because we're looking at both sides of the experience here and trying to create a two-way stream whereby not only does the young person benefit, but they're also actually reverse mentoring the host. And I feel like when it comes to issues about, and essentially it's politics at its corest, it's about power, it's about privilege. You need to be able to engage both sides, because if you were to look, for example, at feminism, there's almost always a backlash when there is one half of society or one section of society that isn't also being brought along as well. And it's hard because, you know, there are historic inequities that need to be righted, but at the same time, to go full circle in order to harmoniously kind of integrate that rebalancing, that rewriting, that justice, you have to bring everyone along. So at the moment, we're seeing all sorts of issues with men, mental health, all sorts of problems, partly, I think, engendered by the fact that women kind of struggle to get, you know, equality when it comes to also working, etc. But are we still doing most of the work at home? You know, there's this kind of, until I think men also are able to feel capable and comfortable with taking up some of the previously exclusively female roles, you're not going to have that true kind of ability for both sides to cross over and embody either space. And I think it's slightly similar when it comes to issues of race. I think that there are a lot of, and we've again seen this with a lot of Trump and Trump supporters, you know, often white communities disenfranchised, often, not always, you know, in the Midwest. And I think there is perhaps a portion of the population that is reacting in a very visceral, fear-based way at the loss of their dominance. And it's not pretty, it's not commendable, but I think that's what's happening. And I think to truly go as far as we can and as far as we need to go, that response needs to be understood and integrated. And it's really difficult because those are the people or their ancestors or the system that they've benefited from is the one that has done so much damage, not just to people of color, but also to our society as a whole. Because at the end of the day, inequality harms everyone. You may not be able to see it, but it does, because it creates a world where there is fear, there is division, and nobody's safe or comfortable or happy in that world, whatever color or whatever benefits you have. So I think, just looking at a lot of the comments posted to that, I mean, it's absurd. There's nothing more beautiful than a family. It doesn't matter, what color they are. And if you turn some of those remarks on their head, would anybody be saying, oh, well, an all-white family, that's somehow radical? No. So I think, there are some people feeling very scared about what the future holds because it requires them to give away a privilege that maybe they didn't even realize was a privilege. And there's a lot of education that needs to be done. And in particular, I think, in our schools, it's shocking the lack of education about colonial Britain, about slavery, about all sorts of, of our history and Black history and history, immigration, immigrant populations and all of that. And I think it's something that white people are really, really responding to in a way, as I said, is not pretty to see. And I wouldn't condone it, but I would hope that we see addressing that as part of the solution, not necessarily part of the problem, because ultimately people are going to react as they react. But until you can bring everyone along, you're just going to have conflict either way and backlash or a reverse situation where another group is now disenfranchised. So those are my thoughts. And I think it's really real stuff and it's going on every single day. There's not a day that goes by where there's not some kind of conversation, within the organization I work at, at the BBC, within the journalism community more broadly, where these sorts of conversations are not happening,
Mm-hmm. No, I get that. And I want to ask you a question about that. But first, Ella says, I like that. So it's quite long. I'll see if I put it on the screen. But she says there are so many complexities to us as people, so many layers. As individuals, we have so many layers of diversity. I'm a woman, an older woman of color, but I think we'll have made progress when people start seeing me as me without the labels. I know that's simplifying it, but I think we all agree, right? If we remove the labels from all of us and see each other as human beings, it sounds all Nirvana, cross-legged stuff. But do you think that's what the solution is? Let's just do away with it.
But I don't think it's, it's not one of those situations, where you can say, oh, I'm colorblind, we're there. No, we're not. We're a long way from that. And I think there has to be acknowledged that there is going to be a difficult journey towards that. And that journey is going to involve a lot of people acknowledging their privilege and giving away that privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no other way to do it, because I've done quite a lot of sort of work looking at things like, abundance and scarcity, but at the end of the day, especially in the times we're living now, economically, it does sometimes feel like there's not enough to go around. And I think with that mindset and with and again, this becomes even more maybe hippie, but with the capitalist system that we've got set up, we are all conditioned to think about, to be in competition, to think that there's only a finite amount of resources and to fight one another for it. And so if we're going to, stay in a system of that sort, it does require others giving away power. And essentially that's, in a way what PressPad does in a miniature sense every single time. It's about, giving away your power and giving away your resources to somebody else, not to hold them. And I think some people, initially sort of brought this up with me, well, if an older person in a position of kind of privilege is, mentoring somebody else, does that then make them kind of feel beholden, or, is there some kind of weird power play? And that's really not how we see it. And it's not how we encourage it. As I said, it's very much a two-way system, because I look at these hosts and I think, man, I feel sorry for you. You're not the future. You don't know anything about the world outside of your tiny little circle of privileged people. And that makes for bad journalism. So actually, you, these young kids, telling you what TikTok is, telling you, who Stormzy is, telling you what's going on in Newcastle or wherever it is that you probably maybe haven't even been in the whole of your life. You need that to stay relevant, because that's the future. And that's the way it's going. You either get with the agenda or you don't. So I think, when you can understand, and we've spoken about this in terms of, showing up and being visible, I think, when we can truly, as a society, understand that diversity is strength and difference is strength. A lot of the young people, during lockdown, we launched a free service giving a one-on-one CV and pitch clinics to our young people, half an hour, totally free. We were inundated. I remember the first Monday, the lovely lady Sean in my business admin team forgot to put buffers in the Calendly. And I ended up doing 16 back-to-back half-hour CV clinics. Oh my God, I was exhausted. We were booked out then, basically all the way through. I think it's 3 months Calendly allows you to book out. Booked out, doing 8 minimum sessions every single day. And one of the things, a recurring theme that kept coming up with me, looking at young people's CVs, every single time they would present themselves to me, they would mention things that were not actually on their CV. And those were the things that really should be on their CV. Those were the things that often they were mentioning apologetically with caveats, saying, oh, well, but I didn't do this, but I didn't do that. Actually, that difference was their strength. So, I think, yes, it is slightly kumbaya, but I don't think we're going to get there. We can't fast track this process. It's a process. I think it's just about embracing it. And if you recognize that you're somebody who has privilege, and you may have privilege in ways that other people may not realize, you may be a Black woman, but you may be a Black woman who has a great career, who has a stable family home. You have privilege. It may not be the same privilege that a white person with a good career, with a stable home has. It's all on a spectrum. And so I think it's just acknowledging where you are in that spectrum, what you can do in service of, the larger kind of societal mission. Because until we get to that point, there will always be these kind of skirmishes and these power struggles.
I love that. Okay, now that's good. We could. There's so much more we can talk about this, but I know we want to get to the LinkedIn and the visibility part, because a lot of people want to know how to bring all of that stuff that you're about onto LinkedIn. But I think the last question I want to ask you about this topic is, why do you care so much? I mean, about diversity. I mean, it'll be so much easier for you to look the other way, because as you said, you do come from a privileged background, 2 parents at home, Oxbridge, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, why do you care so much?
Because I don't want to really live in a world and work in a world that is not as good as it could be. And because I see many aspects of other cultures and they're just brilliant, there are elements of my boyfriend's a Black Frenchman, and there are elements and ways that he connects to his culture and his roots that I wish I had. So I think the world is richer for being able to access and share and celebrate that diversity. It doesn't have to be your own. It doesn't have to be territorial. Yes, we all, want to show up and be proud, of what we are. I'm just seeing, I think, Lola in the comments, an appreciation of me and my holistic being as a Black woman. And I think, yes, but oh my goodness, the elements that, Black culture, and obviously it's in its myriad forms, but even, looking at it as in terms of culture, I'm thinking in particular of America and music, there's just so much there. And it's it brings a poverty of experience and of even kind of intellectual kind of appreciation for us to disregard a whole load of stuff just because of its origins, you know? So I just feel the whole world is richer for having that experience and being able to tap into that. And, you know, I think if I had to live in a world just full of white people like me, God, how boring, how sad, because some of the best things in the world come from places and people that are nothing like me. And of course they do. Because what am I? I'm nothing, you know? And this is the problem. There's such arrogance in systems that have existed and been perpetuated, you know? I mean, if men didn't have women, like all of these great things that have come from people that are not like us, actually, we should be thanking all of those people, because, you know, to think that you can exist on yourself as an island in a system, or even as a type of person, and that's going to give you everything you need. I mean, you're walking around on this planet with your eyes shut. So I just feel very strongly that, you know, that everything that I get to experience comes from a really broad range of people, and it makes my life better. And I would love for everybody to realize that, and for there not to be a politicization or a struggle through that, but just an acceptance and an enjoyment of it.
I love it. I love it. So Tom says, well said. Ella says, yes, we've stopped celebrating that richness, you know. And Gula says it will be our children and their children that will start making a difference if we keep educating. Let's hope so, guys. Let's hope so. You know, there is a better future behind, but ahead, not behind. So yes, I love it. Listen, I want to make the switch to talk about LinkedIn and visibility on LinkedIn, you know, in the 10 minutes that we've got left. So let's talk about it, because I know you came to me for LinkedIn visibility coaching, and I know one of the things that you in the beginning was, it was like the whole idea of being visible on LinkedIn, you found a little scary. And it's something that you're not the only one. I hear this a lot, especially from women. Guys, I don't know, it might be a bit different from you, but us women, we have other issues. We're wonderful in other ways as well. So tell me about that. What is it? What made you want to be visible on LinkedIn, and why was the concept a little scary for you?
I think it's difficult working for the organization I work for. If you've been following the news at all, you know, there are certain standards of impartiality. And I think for me, you know, I've been growing up and evolving, but really sort of in a way in the majority of my professional life have been, I guess, sort of one step removed from the possibility of having a voice. And so the whole idea just was very scary to me. In addition, I think, you know, with PressPad, looking at diversity and operating in that space in the kind of unique niche way that it does, I also just didn't really know how much I deserve to be taking up that space. You know, there are people that could say, well, you know, your organization, your voice is taking away from other voices. You know, what about the voice of, you know, Muslim women that need more representation in the media, et cetera, et cetera. And I just felt maybe I shouldn't be doing this, you know? So I think for me, just being able to go through this process with Mildred has just been incredibly empowering, because ultimately I think visibility for me is about making what you know about yourself on the inside show on the outside, and there not being a kind of discrepancy in how you feel you can articulate yourself, and doing that with, you know, with grace, and also understanding and building a kind of power, not the power that's inbuilt into the structures that already exist, but a kind of power that you have created or that emanates from you and that you can use in the way to do good. So for me, it was really important to be able to speak up on behalf of the organization, you know, that I founded, on behalf of the mission that I really believe in, but to do it in a way that's appropriate, and to have somebody there who could kind of reassure me that what I was doing was right, and also to hold me accountable, to be more disciplined and to be more thoughtful, I think.
I love that. So share with us some of your LinkedIn practices, the practicalities of it. How often do you post? How do you engage? And tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so I'm posting every day. That for me was really difficult because I'm sort of a kind of boom and bust person. I'll, have a really late night doing loads of work, feeling inspired, and then, perhaps, won't be as sort of on the ball the next day. So for me, that practice actually has done a lot more than just, for like my LinkedIn. It's actually helped me to kind of create schedules and whatnot. So I'm posting every morning, and then trying to engage as much, commenting on people's, articles, connecting. I thought I did quite a lot of that before, but I realized that some of it didn't have the kind of the grounding really, in really kind of, it's hard because there's almost so much going on, and I'm one of those people that, tends towards kind of FOMO and wanting to, oh wait, and there's this person I connect to and this person. But I think, when I followed Mildred's advice and kind of exercises and understanding, and kind of really engaging in a much deeper way with comments, you end up realizing actually that you're steered then to connecting with the right type of people, not the people that you think maybe you should, but actual people where you have a commonality, that there's been a connection. So for me, and maybe, we've discussed the algorithm for LinkedIn, it feels a lot more benign than other social networks. But I think that that's been really helpful. And that does all have a real kind of business, application at the moment. We're crowdfunding at PressPad, which is tough in a, pandemic. It's tough. We did a crowdfunder this time last year and raised 45,000, very different world, really reluctant to go back to our community, to ask for funds, and would not have done so if COVID hadn't hit. But, coming and showing up on LinkedIn has actually, rather than being scary, having done a bit of this before the crowdfunder started, it's now actually kind of a bit of an anchor for me, because it's a place I feel that I can, post and feel like I'm, I can share word of what we're doing, and I don't feel like a phony. I don't feel like I'm just asking for something. I really feel like there is a connection, and I'm sharing something, and people are interested. And I'm really looking forward to kind of continuing doing this in a way, that's almost kind of akin to public journaling, when people journal, and it's good for their soul as well. So yeah, and we're using the platform now to reach out and to tell people through my daily posts, and also through direct messages. And, it feels a lot less icky than, perhaps had been my kind of gut reaction to, or would have been the way I felt about doing this without that kind of foundation.
And that's great. I love it. But tell us some of the wins you've had, so far from using LinkedIn in this way. And then we're going to talk about your crowdfunder that you're doing and how people can get involved with that.
Sure. So one of the first, there's been loads of wins and people I've reconnected with. One of the first moments that was really like a kind of moment was when we launched the crowdfunder, and I think the first kind of person I saw that shared it was somebody who I didn't know in real life. Like, I had connected with them on LinkedIn sort of digitally, and we were in one another's network, but I saw that they had donated and shared the post, my first post about it. And I was just like, in fact, it may not even be my post. They may have taken it from somewhere else, or perhaps an email. And I was just like, wow, okay. I didn't realize, I can't remember the person's name. I'd have to look back, but I just thought, that's so cool. And then in addition to that, there were conversations that I'd had, almost this time last year, really, with the last crowdfunder, and I had never been able to follow up on them. And I was able to re-engage. And one of them was a guy that works in media HR, and he was telling me we had a quick Zoom call, and we've now kind of got plans for a partnership in 2021. And he also said, I've got a colleague who's on furlough for this second lockdown. Do you have anything, that maybe she could do to volunteer to help at PressPad. And so now she's in a conversation, and I'm thinking of some things. Okay, are there ways she could help engage with potential media hosts? And all of that kind of stuff just wouldn't have happened had it not. And I still feel that the potential for within LinkedIn is just totally untapped. There's so much more that could be done. So yeah, those are a few small wins, but I think there's so much more there.
Absolutely, because you're still early-ish stages of your LinkedIn journey, so there's absolutely so much more to explore for you, for your PressPad enterprise. So in the last few minutes that we've got, because I really want people to be able to go out and support what you're doing with PressPad. So tell us about the crowdfunding and what that's going to achieve, how much you need, where you are with it, and how people can donate.
Sure. So we're crowdfunding for what was a program that we started in mid-April as a response to the lockdown and COVID. Obviously, a host mentorship platform, the worst thing that could happen is something when people are in lockdown, socially distanced. It just completely, put us a pause and a stop to the hosting that we were doing, and we had quite a few bookings in actually, but we were lucky enough to have a grant, and so we were putting on this support program called PressPad Remote. It was a weekly webinar, a weekly Instagram Q&A with young and inspiring journalists, the CV and pitch clinics I mentioned, and then a monthly speed kind of networking, almost like a kind of speed dating thing where we put people in different breakout rooms and everyone would network. And we want to bring this back for another season in 2021, because while, there's good news on the vaccine front, the economy is going to be really, really, really tough for a long time. And there's a knock-on effect to, young people who are essentially in career limbo. And a lot of them, just being on the end of rejection letters week in, week out, for them, it's really handy to have a community, ways they can upskill, people they can meet when we're all, isolated. And particularly with the media, I don't know if you found this, Mildred, when you started out, but a lot of networking happens, coffees, parties, etc. That's not happening anymore. So there's a massive hole in these young people's, early careers. And that's what PressPad Remote aims to fill. We're looking to raise 15,000 by December 15th. We're a week in. We're a third of the way to our target. We have good days and bad days, and crowdfunders are really strange beasts, but that's what we're raising. That's where we're at. So we've got about another 10,000 to go. And in addition, the crowdfund is hosted on the platform crowdfunder.co.uk. I'm sure that will be a way of us sharing the link at some point. The additional sort of, I guess, what's at stake is if we do reach our target, there's match funding from the Mayor's Fund and councils. So, we could possibly end up raising £5,000-10,000 more on top of that 15, which would be incredible. And that would also enable us then to put on weekly kind of mental health coffee drop-in sessions as well. We've got so many plans. This is, just sort of the start. So, whatever it is given, we'll do good. And we've got tons on our social media. We're at PressPad UK across all social. We've got loads of sort of quotes and testimonials of people who have, benefited from PressPad Remote and would love to see it come back.
Fantastic. So I'm gonna put here the link, right? Is that correct? So
that's our website,
yeah, PressPad.co.uk. That is where you can go to find out details about the crowdfunder and to be able to donate and support the cause. I know loads of people, I'm so sorry I didn't get to go through all the comments, but I know people, JP saying what an awesome vision, and there's so many people who support the vision that you have for PressPad. So guys, Olivia needs your financial support too, if you can. So please head over to presspad.co.uk and donate and support. And of course, how can people connect with you personally, Olivia? Is it via LinkedIn? Is that the best way?
Yep, LinkedIn would be great. And just DM me. And if there's anything you want to do, or if there's any way that we can help you or I can help you with my connections in the media or my awareness of media, it's, really lovely to give back. And, I'm always love to return favors. So please don't hesitate to ask.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. We're gonna leave it there, but I think this is a nice comment to end on. And Ngozi says, "Well done, Olivia, for recognizing the enriching facets of diversity. What would the world be if we were all the same?" I think that's a really nice, I think that's a nice thought to end it on, and to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here with us. And I know if you get some time later tomorrow to go through the comments and respond to anybody who's got any questions or anything like that, that would be brilliant. But thank you so much for being here with us, Olivia. It's been eye-opening.
Thank you guys for coming, and thanks for your comments.
Okay, lovely. We're gonna let you go, and then I'm gonna wrap up, and then we'll catch you. But remember, guys, follow her on LinkedIn and do donate if you can to PressPad's crowdfunding, which is on at the moment. Thanks, Olivia. Okay, guys, it's 7 o'clock. It's after 7. So thank you so much for joining us. So that's probably one of the more intense of the conversations I've had, but I really enjoyed it, and I feel like it was eye-opening too. So I would love to know your thoughts and your feedback and your takeaways. So please do drop it in the comments, because I do a summary on Fridays, right? So I kind of cheat and look through your comments and use some of what you've said as well. So if you've got any takeaways from this, please drop it in the comment, because I will take a look and hopefully include it in my summary tomorrow. But listen, thank you so much for joining us. We've got 2 more of these. As Olivia says, join her, follow, connect with her on LinkedIn. You can also search PressPad Remote, to find out more about PressPad and a crowdfunder. But the next interview we've got is on Thursday. So we've got 2 more left. Next Thursday, the 3rd of December, and then we've got the final one on the 10th of December, and then there's something special after that, which I'll tell you about later. But do join us. We're going to have another amazing woman, the 5th of the 6 women that we're interviewing, and then we will finish with the series until season 2 in 2021, right? But join us next Thursday. Tell a friend to tell a friend, and bring everybody with you. But listen, follow Start Being Visible, hashtag Start Being Visible on LinkedIn. That's the best way to find replays of any of the sessions that you missed, and any other info that we have that I share about LinkedIn and how you can be visible, start being visible, to build your brand and your business. And of course, if you want support, DM me, send me a message. I'm more than happy to help. But guys, listen, I'm going to love you and leave you and say good night. And hopefully I will see you back here next Thursday for another episode. So thank you. Take care. Bye-bye now.